Welcome to Austin Christians. Great to have you guys here. It's also nice to see the sun shining for once, right? I was like, oh, old Texas, my Texas, I've missed you. Tell you what, it's been a crazy rainy time. I'm so happy for sunshine, at least for one day anyways, right? We are in the middle of a series entitled Ignite. We're talking about the Holy Spirit and the work of the Holy Spirit in our lives. And we're kind of bringing home for a landing here over the next few weeks. And we're coming to a point where today I want to talk to you a little bit about the Spirit in community. Because, you know, the Spirit of God isn't just an individual thing, right? It's a community thing. It involves all of us. And I want to explain that here this morning for a few moments and take a look at some passages. I don't know how many of you guys have ever seen the movies or read the book series Divergent. But I got into that book series a few years ago for entertainment purposes only. Enjoyed reading it. There's like 4 or 5 books, 3 books I think. Urgent, Detergent, and Urgent or something. I forget what they all are. But anyway. But the concept of this series and the movie is that this society is based. Basically, they split into different values, right? And so you have, there are factions. They call them factions, and so they're factioned off depending on your particular value or bent in life, right? And so they have there's the dauntless, which are the brave ones, right? So if you become a dauntless, you jump out of buildings, off of trains, and all kinds of cool stuff. You're not scared of anything. Some of you guys, you're dauntless, right? You can kind of tell, those are the guys that are radical, right? Then they have the amity, I think is what they call, and they're the kind people. Their whole thing is kindness. Be good to everybody. Love everybody, right? That's sort of their bent. Then you have the erudites, who are the intellectuals. They're the smart ones, right? How many of us are erudite? No, I was kidding. Anyway, so then you have the abnegation. They're the selfless. So they're all about just pouring themselves out. That's their basically others first. That's their particular bent and their value. And then there's candor, who are the honest ones. They're the ones who tell you the truth even when you don't want to hear it, right? And so in this whole series is based on the fact that these factions develop and they become, almost like, I don't want to say political parties, but they become like, in the society, people are divided. And so you're born and you're chosen, okay, you're this and you're going to be a part of that one. Of course, the idea of it is there's a few people who don't fit in any of those categories, and they're the divergent. Oh, let's be scared of them. That's the whole premise. Well, why am I telling you this? I think, sometimes that we misunderstand the Spirit, and we have our own sort of gifts, right? And we can tend to do this in church, right? The intellectuals would be the teachers, the ones who like to dig into the Bible study. The dauntless are the ones we're about share your faith every day on the street. What's wrong with all you people? How come you're not as bold as I am? I'm not scared of talking to somebody. What's wrong with you, right? And then, then you might have, the candor. They're the honest ones. They're the ones who are like, well, I don't know why everybody's so hypocritical all the time. Let's just tell it like it is. And, whatever, we can almost split into factions even in our own midst, right? Because we all actually have different strengths and I believe different gifts that the Spirit of God has given us, right? And so the whole idea, interestingly, when I read or remember watching those movies and reading the books, is fascinating because it's so much about human nature and how we tend to be divided based on, sometimes based even on the things that we are good at or what are important to us, what we value. When the fact of the matter is there's one Spirit, yet there are many people and many gifts. And so the Spirit is what brings us together. And so I want us to kind of unpack this a little bit this morning. Look over in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. You see what happens is when we get too singularly focused on the Spirit's work in our own personal life, and we forget that the Spirit is at work in the collective family of God, then what happens is we are very much prone towards arrogance. We're very much prone towards pride. Because we begin to see, well, the Spirit works in me and has given me this ability or that ability, and so then we kind of get fixated on that, and that becomes the way it's supposed to be. And that for us is how the Spirit is. But yet we forget that we are part of a whole. And so that is a very important piece that keeps us sort of level, if you will. It keeps us stable in a sense of understanding that it's not just about us, right? And I'll explain. Look in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16. Paul writes this. He says, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person, for God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple." Now, I want you to consider for a moment that the context of this passage is divisions in the church congregation. You know, Paul's writing to the Corinthians, and they're basically saying, hey, you know what, we like this guy, we like that guy, and there were divisions, they were developing factions within the church and following different people. And Paul writes and says, look, you guys, this is wrong, because the reason being is because we are God's temple collectively where God's Spirit dwells. So God's Spirit dwells amongst us. In fact, all the places, I've said this many times, and I'll probably say it every day till I die, just about, is everywhere in the New Testament where it says you, he's saying y'all. You know what I'm saying? It's all of us. It's everybody. He's not saying that to you personally. He's saying to all of us. We are collectively the temple of God. Now, in a micro sense, yes, of course, you know, we ourselves as individuals also are little mini temples because the Spirit dwells in us. But the bigger idea is that the Spirit dwells amongst us. And that there can be no divisions in the body. And so I think this understanding, if we can kind of grasp hold of this mental image, it really changes the way that we approach family life in the congregation, church life, right? Because we go, okay, there's no divisions amongst us. It can't be. That's contrary to the Spirit of God. Doesn't work. Like sometimes we kind of, the easy go-to is like, well, you know what, I disagree with this person. Let me just go find another group. Let me just go find another set of people that are Christians that are like me. Let me go find some Herodites to hang out with. Let me go find the Dauntless, because that's my people. You know, and we kind of get into fractions thinking, okay, well, it's okay, we'll just depart. But you know, the truth is, that's not the way the Spirit of God works. Because God's put us together not because we're the same, but because we're different. That's kind of the cool thing, right? Is that we're all different. It'd be real boring if you're all the same. And there are a lot of problems that develop. If you watch those movies, a lot of problems develop because all the same people hanging out together, right? The erudites weren't very bold. And the bold people weren't very smart. And all kind, you know, it's like God puts it all together for a reason, right? Because that's the way it's supposed to be. And the Spirit dwells amongst us. Yeah, we can justify division so many times. And what I want to say here in the beginning is that division is not okay. It's not right. Because the Spirit is something that dwells amongst all of us. And so to divide that, to tear that apart in any way, it is to try to tear apart the Spirit of God. Yeah, we justify it in many ways. Well, you just don't understand me. No one understands me, or I'm just different, or you're just different. Or we place blame. Well, you know, this person over here, and I mean, the Spirit might be in them, but I don't see it, and they hurt me this way. And so we kind of justify division when what we don't realize is we're tearing out a piece of the temple of God when we divide. You know, it's kind of like Jenga. You have a game Jenga, right? You know, you have a big giant. We have a giant Jenga I made out of 2x4s. And so it's pretty big. And you pull one of those things out of there, and you know, at first the build it's okay. But you know, the more bricks you pull out and put on top, you know, that thing gets less and less stable, right? You can't keep pulling. You're not supposed to keep pulling things out. Why? Because it's stronger when it's together. And so it's the same concept for us as a fellowship. Division is contrary to to the idea of a temple being one. I heard a story recently of a couple of brothers who built homes on opposite sides of a river, and they got in a big argument. And so the older brother, who's on the one side, is really annoyed at the younger brother. So he said he calls a carpenter to come out and says, "Look, man, I'm sick of this guy. He makes me mad. I don't want to even see him. I want you to build me something that will prevent me from having to have anything to do with him at all." You know, and so the guy's, "Okay, I got you." And so he goes and and he gets to work, and a couple days later, the brother walks out and he sees a bridge built over the river. And he sees his younger brother coming to him with a big smile on his face and gives him a big hug and says, man, I tell you what, I'm so grateful you built this bridge. Because I'm so sorry for my own pride. I'm so sorry about whatever they disagreed about. And of course, and their relationship was healed. Of course, the older brother, that wasn't in the tent, right? And so he looks at the carpenter, he's like, hey man, okay, I'll tell you what, I got some more projects for you. And the guy's like, yeah, sorry dude, I gotta go, I got other bridges to build. And I think that, I love that analogy because I think it really speaks to us as who we are as disciples of Jesus with the Spirit of God in us. Is that we are to be bridge builders, not wall builders. And we are not to be building walls, we are to be building bridges. And because God's Spirit is amongst us, right? And I think what a great illustration that really is. So how do we do this? Okay, so I think I'm pretty sure I'm probably speaking to the choir right here, right? So far I haven't said anything to you that you go, wow, Dave, thanks for dropping that bomb on me this morning. I mean, I love my fellowship. I like everybody except for that one guy. Everybody else I really like. I'm down with what you're saying, but I know it's hard sometimes. How do we do this? What does that look like for us, right? Well, look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12. How do we allow the Spirit to bring us together? Because so much wants to tear us apart. If you listen to the media today, everything is designed to tear you apart. Everybody tells lies about the other. You listen to the news, you read Facebook, not personal posts, but political posts. All this stuff is designed to separate us, right? So then sometimes those things even spill over into the fellowship. It's like, oh, well, you think that? What's wrong with you? Oh, you think that? What's wrong with you? Because we're just kind of parroting the stuff that we're being told, right? That stuff has no place in the kingdom of God, right? Why is it? How do we overcome that? Well, first of all, we have to understand that God has given us His Spirit for the common good. Chapter 12, verse 1. So it writes this. Now about the gifts of the Spirit, brothers and sisters, I do not want you to be uninformed. You know that when you were pagans, somehow or other, you were influenced and led astray to mute idols. Therefore, I want you to know that no one who is speaking by the Spirit of God says, Jesus be cursed, and no one can say Jesus is Lord except by the Holy Spirit. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in every one, it is the same God at work. Now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. To one there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom, to another a message of knowledge, and by means of the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by that one Spirit, to another miraculous powers, to another prophecy, to another distinguishing between spirits, to another speaking in different tongues, and to still another the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and He distributes them to each one as He determines. And of course, if you know the passage, it goes on to talk about the body. It gives us the analogy of the body and how all the parts are many, but they form one body. And so, what is he saying? He says, look guys, the fact is that the Spirit of God distributes the gifts accordingly. He spreads it around. There's no one super Christian in here. Not one of you can say I can do all those things. And you might think you can, but you're probably deceived, and let's talk about that later, right? None of us has all the gifts. I don't. You don't. But he says that the Spirit of God intentionally spreads it around. Why? To create division? No. He says for the common good. Difference is what brings us together, not what tears us apart. It's all in how we look at it. The differences bring us together. It's God's design. He gives and distributes the gifts, the talents, the abilities, the things that we have. The problem, as I said already, being addressed in the Corinthian letter is that there was a spirit of rivalry and pride about about the manifestations of the Spirit. So people were kind of getting proud about the things that they were able to do. I'm proud that I can do this or I can do that. And they were looking down on others who couldn't do as they did and had other gifts. And so there was rivalry. It's just human nature, right? But Paul appeals to them by saying, look, the Spirit of God has given us all of this so that we can be unified and come together. And they had forgotten that it was for the common good. I really believe this is one of the reasons why, in our congregations, being a part of a small group is so important. Because in a group this size, it's easy to get lost. Some of you perhaps even have come to this congregation saying, I used to be a part of a church that was 5 times this size, and I didn't know anybody. I was totally lost, and I kind of feel like I know folks here, and that's good. But even in a group this size, oftentimes we kind of get lost in our particular strengths and weaknesses or gifts that we have that we'd like to be able to contribute. Maybe we sometimes can feel like there's not space for that. Everything's already covered, which is probably not true. But in any case, it's definitely in a group size we feel that way, right? And so in a small group, the relationships in a small group are such that really everybody has to participate. Right? You're not on the sideline when you're in a small group because there's like 10 of you, and everyone's kind of got something they bring to the table, right? And you can't sit in the corner. You can sit in the corner, no offense if you're in the corner today, but you can't just, I mean this figuratively, right? You can't hide out in the corner, in a small room. And so then the Spirit's able to work more through the gifts that we have, right? It's a different animal when we talk about a collective this size. But even still, He still works through our differences. But that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for us to understand we need to be a part of a community, of a small group, so that God can use the gifts that we have. Now, part of that is just knowing what gifts you have, right? Identifying, what is it God called me to? And I want us to think about that. I want you to consider that. What is it, what are some of the things that God has gifted you with? Every single one of us has gifts. Every single one of us has things that are valuable to others. Right. Every one of us. Right. Doesn't matter who you are. All of us have something. And so part of it is just understanding, what is it that God has called me to? What has He given me that is helpful for the common good? What is the Spirit doing? I think that's what makes the church such a special place. The kingdom is such a special place because the Spirit unifies us in spite of our differences. That's an amazing thing. Look at Ephesians chapter 4. In Ephesians chapter 4. Now, what I've said so far, I hope sounds very eloquent and noble, right? And again, you kind of go, that sounds awesome. I want to be a part of a church like that. Let's all be a part. Let's all use our gifts. And amen, brother. Now, let's talk about the reality of how that really comes to be, right? Because Paul gets down to it right here. Because we all know that's easier said than done, right? If you don't know that, you will at some point. Here's how it's done. Paul kind of gives a little insight in chapter 4 of Ephesians and verse 2. He says, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. So here Paul again appeals to this fact that, look guys, the Spirit is what brings us together, but it's not one of those Spirit bringing us together that's kind of magical or mystical in some way. Like, okay, well, we're all Christians, so we're all sort of naturally unified with each other. It doesn't work like that. He says you need to, what? Make every effort to keep the unity that the Spirit gives us through the bond of peace. Well, how do you do that? Well, humility is a big piece of it, right? Humility. He says patience, gentleness, bearing with one another in love. These are critical elements. And so when we talk about the Spirit's work in our lives, a lot of it is keeping up with the Spirit in regards to how we treat one another, and in doing so with all humility, with all patience, and with all love. It doesn't just happen by accident, right? Humility, that's a tough one. What does humility mean? Sometimes we don't even understand what humility is, right? You think humility, I think, humility is when, I just hit that three-point shot in somebody's face on the basketball court. Ooh, you just get humbled, right? Or like last week when I dunked on John Glinski, and man, he was humbled when I did that. Yeah. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that was my dream last night. I'm doing good to touch the net these days. Anyway, but that's not what humility is. Not humility is not pressing someone down to make yourself better. That's not humility, or being pressed down by somebody to make them feel better in that sense. Humility is something much different, right? Humility is a way of viewing ourselves in the whole. Proverbs, I don't even have time today to kind of go through. There are so many Proverbs that talk about humility. But let me just lay a couple up on you, okay? Proverbs 12, verse 15 says, the way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. So, a couple things here right off the bat, right? I mean, talking about humility in contrast with prudence or wisdom. He says, first, there's a way that seems right to a fool. When we're not humble, we always think we're right. How many of us have ever been guilty of that? You're in good company, because that's me right there, right? And we think we're right. I'm right. You get a situation, maybe it's with your spouse or with one of the brothers, sisters, or friend, or somebody. You're like, we just kind of dig our heels in because I'm right, you're wrong. And it becomes about being right, wrong, and we're not open to listening because it's all about being right, wrong. Humility is willing to listen. It's willing to be open. It's willing to hear someone else out. Only a fool thinks he's right without listening. Now, you might be in the end right. We have a kind of a joke in my house, because, I have this thing, this is a sidetrack, but I have this thing about where, I don't like the way culture treats dads and men in general, right? And so I want to make sure that my children are programmed properly. And so I came to this thing a while back, and I was like, because it happens such that there were lots of times when my kids would question what I was saying, and I'm like, and they would find out at the end that I was indeed right. And so I would just text them things like #Dad'sAlwaysRight. And yeah, it's very humble. I know this is a terrible example and a point about humility. I'm not even sure where I'm going with this now. But anyways. And so, I'm programming because I want them to understand, hey, listen, Dad is right. You know what I'm saying? You need to listen to Dad because the world tells you Dad's a doof. And so there's something noble in that, but also something a little bit wrong in that too, right? Because I'm not always right. Now, they're mature enough to understand that. Thank goodness. But they also hopefully respect Dad's opinion, which was that was the aim in the first place. But we can't always be right. Even Dad's not always right. Don't tell my kids that when I'm here. But anyway. But when we have to be right, but here's the thing, when we have to be right about everything, there's no humility in that. And I tell you, so many times I see conflict in relationships and marriages and so on and so forth when it's all about just, I have to be right, and the unwillingness to listen, unwillingness to consider the other person's perspective and point of view. And it creates so much anxiety and so much conflict that I believe it grieves the Spirit of God when we're not humble. And so Paul says, be completely humble. Be completely gentle. The proverb here says, don't be a fool. A fool doesn't listen. And they show their annoyance at once. But a prudent person, someone who's wise, someone who is humble, is going to overlook an insult. Oftentimes that's the other thing. We feel insulted by something and we can't let it go. That's pride. It's foolish according to what the Bible says to us. Proverbs 21 verse 2 says, a person may think their own ways are right, but the Lord weighs the heart. I don't know if anything defines humility better than that one. Because let's be honest, we all think we're right about most stuff. Right? I think humility isn't saying, well, I'm wrong. Humility is saying, okay, I think I'm right, but I should probably wait on the Lord on this one. I should probably let the Lord weigh my heart. I should probably be careful. I should probably listen to the other person. I should probably, think about that before I just, execute judgment on this. That's humility. It's understanding that before God, hey, we're messed up, we're not perfect, so let me just listen. I tell you, that perspective changes relationships, right? He goes on, he says, so humility, patience, being patient with one another, bearing with one another. So, example of my own life, I'll confess my own sin this week. So, this past week, I've been battling once again tendonitis in my Achilles heel, which, as most of you know, you've been coming here long, every other week I'm limping out here on stage. And it happened again last week. Anyways, long story short, I overdid it, and my toe started bothering me. I couldn't walk for like 4 days with my toe. And then as soon as my toe finally started feeling better, my other foot, my Achilles, started bothering me. And if you know me, I'm an active person. I like working out, doing stuff. I don't make me sit down and do nothing. That's like that to me is the definition of hell. And so I was grumpy. I'm just gonna be honest. My family can confirm the fact that I was just not happy with life. I was getting saltier by the day. Can't work out. It's like, I'm mad now. I can't even work out. I feel bad. And, daughter's getting married. And I'm hopping around the dance with one leg. And what's that going to be like? And, I'm just mad. And so, anyways, I don't know. I was kind of waxing eloquent about my irritation. And I said something to the fact that, I know it was. The Searneck girls, they're awesome. My goddaughters, the Searneck girls, they're awesome. They made me they heard that I had my foot hurt, and so they made me a picture. They drew me a picture with a foot on it and a heart and said, "We're praying for you," in their own language, right? We're praying for your foot. And of course, I was very touched by that, but I was like, yeah, well, I've been praying too. Which is what I said. Full disclosure, I said this. I'm such a knucklehead. I was like, yeah, I've been praying too. Apparently God doesn't want me to get better, or something like that. Something snarky like that, right? Just kind of one of the day's snarky moments, right? And my lovely wife was there, heard me say this, and she's like, looks over at me, and she's like, well, maybe God's just waiting for you to, he's just being, or he said, how'd she say it? Maybe God doesn't want to answer. I gotta write this. I gotta get this right. I blew this already. Maybe God is waiting for you to be patient with your suffering. Wow. That's all she said. She said nice as pie, a little smile on her face. I felt like a total dork. I was like, you're probably right. And I appreciate her patience with me. I wasn't easy to live with last week, probably. She's giving me that look like, yeah, I'm not going to say it, but yeah, you're right. And I appreciate her patience in saying that and speaking the truth, but doing so with a spirit of patience with me, right? And I think that, to me, defines, what it means. We bear with one another. We don't always get it right. We're not always making the right choices. We're not always saying the right things. And I'm sure we can irritate the mess out of one another from time to time. But the Bible says to bear with one another. And when we do, I really believe God works through that. He works through that. I did get patient. My foot does feel better. And I don't know if that's why God did it. I have no idea. It might hurt tomorrow. But amen. You've got to be at peace with however it goes. I appreciate the admonition, right? I needed to hear that. You see, we are the temple of God, collectively. And so when we do say and things that divide, that is contrary to the Spirit. You realize that? When you're at odds with your spouse and you don't reconcile that, you're at odds with the Spirit of God, assuming you're both disciples of Jesus. Right. You're at odds with the Spirit of God. When you have a problem with one of the brothers or sisters in the congregation, you don't resolve that. You're at odds with the Spirit of God. And Paul says, don't divide the Spirit. Don't divide it. We need to be humble and gentle and patient with one another and reconcile these things. Amen? Now, I will offer one disclaimer. Go ahead and turn to Philippians 2. One disclaimer about that. I'm going to say this. This is just kind of where I came to in the sermon series. So don't think that I'm speaking to you specifically. Like I'm not talking to somebody. Don't do that kind of thing. But sometimes when you do something, you get that specific, and someone goes, "Wow, you must have been talking to me. Who told you?" Well, if the Spirit's talking to you, it's the Spirit talking to you, not me. Okay. So I'm not grinding my axe on anybody in this room. Understand? But these are truths. These are truths that we must put into practice in our lives to maintain the unity that God's Spirit brings us, the beautiful unity that we have in Christ. Philippians 2, we're going to read this and take communion. In Philippians 2, verse 1. Of course, Jesus is the ultimate example of this. And in chapter 2, verse 1, he says, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." And he goes on, if you read the rest of the passage, he describes Jesus leaving the side of God, becoming a human, and giving his life for us as an example of what he's just written. You see, the unity of the Spirit, he said, comes from humility, considering others better than ourselves. And that's exactly what Jesus did when he gave his life for us. He demonstrates for us the kind of spirit that we should have towards one another. And he did so by giving his life. And it says here, valuing those of ourselves and looking not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. I mean, Jesus obviously considered that. I mean, he considered his own interests, but then he also considered the interests of others and made a choice to give of himself in humility. I don't know about you, but I find the challenge, the admonition to humility much easier to swallow when I see that quality in my God. It's not like an almighty God, all-powerful, sitting there going, "Yo, you need to be humble." It's not like that. He's saying, listen, you should be humble towards one another as I have been humble towards you. And it's that humility and that example that we celebrate when we take communion. That Jesus died for us, that he was risen from the dead, to the glory of the Father. And we proclaim that until he comes by taking the communion together. So let's do so.